Okay.
How long after you got back into your recovery at what point did you think I want to talk about my story on at schools and on Bank Abroad? And what was it that kind of made you do it?
Alright, the Bank Abroad thing was a culmination of a long chain of events that started with the blog. My goal was to expose what was going on to the world. The schools thing, when I got back to England, I did a radio interview with Eddie Murr, and a Harley Street drug counsellor heard the interview, and he contacted the BBC. He said, look, I've got a business where I send people into schools to tell them the story, and I'd like to know if Shaun would like a job. Great, job opportunity, you've got a criminal record. But I said to him, I've got to get my head straight first. So it took me a year and a half before I set my head straight. And I'll try and do a talk at school. It was Bishop Stortford College, year 11. So nervous, I can't even eat my breakfast. I go into that hall, and there's about 150, 200 of them. And I'm more scared of that year 11 than murders and gangsters. Literally for the entire hour, I paced like a prisoner myself. I can't look at him, just this raw, nervous energy crackling off me. And I got out of there. And I called my mum and dad. So here's what happened. I must have thought I was a lunatic. I'm not got out of this speaking stuff at all, and I'm getting depressed, I can't get a job from my record. And I got an email from the school about 3 weeks later, and he said, we get a professional public speaker in every week. Our kids thought you're the best talker of the year, and we were very much likely to come back. And that's what got me confidence up. And since then, it's gone from strength to strength, doing over 100 talks a year. Furthest I've been so far is Germany. I did a talk at a military base out there, because kids out there are on the same curriculum. Ministry of Defence with me out there. Did get an email from Japan 2 months ago about asking me to go and do a talk there. Contacted the Japanese embassy, drug offence in America, you will never ever get into Japan, so I can't do it. And to spoil that opportunity. Yeah.
Is it just mainstream schools you talk to? Or do you do units for change of behaviour? Youth justice?
The bulk of what I speak to is schools. I've done some talks at prisons, done some talks to young offenders, done some talks to young people at risk, but that's probably only about 10%. Yeah.
You're seeing such a terrible side of what's happening in America. What do you think the solution is? What do you think would sort of turn things around?
What state are you from?
State?
Oh, Canada.
No, from Australia.
Australia. I think when something goes through an excess, public start to push back, and that's what's happening in America now. All these young people are being locked up for drug offences, getting massive amounts of time, and they're getting out. They're destroyed mentally, because that sheriff prided himself on being the toughest sheriff in America in the remand jail. I'm tough on crime. He gets voted in all the time for saying that. He embodies that line, I'm tough on crime. If those young people coming in there, even though it worked for me and I'm the poster child for it, those young people coming in, that maybe got a weed offence or a club drug offence or something like that, right away they get recruited by the gangs. The gangs come up to them, they feel safer with the gang. They then have commit acts of violence to be a member of the gang and rise up in the gang. They're shooting up heroin and crystal meth. They're getting these neo-Nazi tattoos, swastikas, SS lightning bolts. There was even a guy in there where he had a picture of Hitler overseeing a gas chamber of Jews dying all over his body. How are you going to get a job when you get out and you look like that? And the gang knows that. Just like the prison knows, if you let these guys destroy themselves on drugs and get all these tattoos, they're going to commit more crimes and come right back. The gang knows that as well. And it keeps them both functioning. It's like they've got this relationship. Yeah, so I've got a friend out there, a lady, her son had been put in prison, 12 years, something like that. And she Googled and found my blog and she wrote to me. He'd been in a drunk driving accident. His best friend had died. The police went to his bedroom, searched the house. He had Gothic paraphernalia in his bedroom, so they said it was a killing, a satanic killing, and they dubbed him the occult killer in the media. Yeah. years later, it comes out he was part of what's called a kids for cash scheme being operated by the judge, who was in cahoots with a private prison for young people that had just been built in that area. He was taking kickbacks from the private prison, and the judge ended up getting put in prison himself for doing it. Yeah, but that's how out of control things are over there. You know, these corporations making massive political contributions to keep the laws in place, to send the contracts to the private prisons. It doesn't matter which party wins in America, Republican or Democrat. The private prisons are contributing hundreds of millions to both sides. So it's the illusion of choice. Whoever wins the election is going to keep all this going for these guys.
Is that getting worse and worse though in America, even with the public backlash?
Is it continuing to get worse? The two forces are going against each other right now, the public backlash and the urge to continue it by the prisons and the politicians who have been brought out. So it's unfolding, day by day. I'm watching closely to see how it's going to end. Yeah. Yep.
Well, how would you compare that American system with what's happening in Britain now with privatisation?
Okay, the British system typically has been more humane from what I experienced. I mean, every different state has different laws, different prisons, different conditions. Everyone can have a different experience depending upon who you run into. I've visited prisons here and spoke to prisoners, and it seems like they have a lot more than they do have in America, but it's being taken away from them. Chris Grayling has just, he's put a list out now of 100 things that prisons can no longer have. You cannot send a book to a guy in a UK prison now for him to read. It's against the law. It was introduced last year to ban reading, a fundamental human right. When these guys, a lot of them can't read as it is, it's just sending them further backwards. And he's doing this to cash in on the tough in crime brigade that are going to vote for him at the next election. But, who cares about prison so he can get away with it? That's his attitude. Yeah. Yep.
Do you think an anti-drug policy worldwide is bad?
Anti-drug policy?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
In the sense that, eliminating drugs would resolve any kind of problem with crime. It all seems very interrelated in financial institutions and government institutions.
Yeah.
And, where
I don't think drugs can be eliminated because they've always been around. What hasn't always been around is statutory drug laws. It's only the introduction of statutory drug laws which have made the prison system population explode. Typically, crimes were murder, theft, rape, robbery, all these things. If you look throughout history, hundreds of thousands of years, these have all been considered the traditional crimes. But now, all of a sudden, statutory drug laws are in place. Women very rarely went to prison before statutory drug laws. Now the female prison population is exploding as well because of drug laws. So I think that's got to be addressed.
To the opposite of that question, you always get debated, they're just all drugs legal, because they're doing parts of America with marijuana, etc. It takes out a cartel, makes drugs a lot cleaner. Like, alcohol and tobacco is a drug, you're smoking a pipe away for it's legal.
Yeah.
So what would be your thought if they just cleaned it up, got it out of the cartels, made it legal in controlled environments, obviously, and approached it in that direction?
Well, a lot of business people, policemen, and even The Economist are putting forward the argument for that.
Yeah.
I did economics at university. If you make something illegal, the value of it shoots up. When the value of it shoots up, it's a direct motivation for it to be mass produced by criminals. Because the only people that have the capabilities to do that are the largest criminal organizations.
Or the government.
Or the government, yeah. And the government, yeah. Like in Mexico, look at the cartel right now, the wealth of the Mexican cartel. And that's deeply ingrained in the Mexican government as well. I met Mexican policemen and stuff like that who, were soliciting me even after I got out of prison to try and set up a cocaine operation, bringing cocaine over here for the Mexican cartel. People I knew previously from